Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Jane Ambassador Office Hours number 9, Building Your Brand, How to Stand Out on Social Media for Your Business and Your Clients. I'm your host, David Bruin Jr., and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Kelly McKenna. Kelly is a therapist dedicated to helping individuals overcome anxiety and a business coach who has successfully guided hundreds of therapists to thrive in their private practices. So this is going to be a great conversation for myself as well. So today we'll dive into the importance of social media, building your brand, how to create authentic online presence, and strategies to help your business grow, stand out, and connect with clients. But before I say any more, Kelly, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, can you just share with everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Kelly McKenna. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I've had my own private practice since October 2020. When I started my private practice, I made an Instagram page and thought maybe I would get, I don't know, two, three, four clients from there. I was like, maybe it'll help me kind of build and grow. And things took off rather quickly. That Instagram page where I built my private practice is at Sit with Kelly. And I really just shared a lot on there about being an anxious millennial, helping anxious millennials, therapy, some tips, lots and lots of validation. And things were super successful. So after doing that for a few years, I started doing some business coaching with other therapists. I now have a second Instagram page, Business of Therapy, where I talk all about how to grow your private practice with Instagram.
Oh, that's amazing. And starting up in 2020. So I guess that makes perfect sense with you have that online presence and now you have two online accounts that are booming as far as followers and teaching clinicians how to grow their business. Just seems like everything just the stars just aligned out in
Yeah,
2020, even though the world was shutting down in 2020.
it gave me a lot of time to be like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna figure out something here. I wasn't too happy with my day job, so
For sure, for sure. Now, I know showing up online involves being authentic, being consistent, engaging to build trust with your people. I guess, can you talk us through like those first steps in regards to like, okay, got this name, sit with Kelly. Now what, right?
yeah.
How do you build that momentum and keep it going?
I think that first post is always the hardest for folks. So if you've never
Hmm.
posted on Instagram, like please know that every single time that you post after that gets easier and easier. But the good news is that the first time you post, truly nobody's going to see it. You're going to have like zero followers, right? And so it doesn't really matter so much what you put out there. It's just about like taking some action and doing something. The thing I do really suggest working on in the beginning is getting clear on your niche. Something I see a lot of therapists do, and other helping professionals as well, is they really focus on like very broad education because they don't want to exclude anybody or they don't want to say something wrong. And so they put just a lot of information of tips that you could easily Google, and they sort of forget to be specific and talk to like one specific person. So I changed my niche a few times in the beginning. At first, I thought I was going to really help with perfectionism, and that triggered the heck out of my own perfectionism. I was like Googling and reading like 12
Yeah.
blog posts to write about 3 sentences to share on Instagram. And I was like, this is not going to work for me.
Yeah.
Uh, then I did some body image stuff for a while and I enjoyed that, but eventually ended up kind of shifting into anxiety. And I'll still share a little bit of body image stuff here and there. But I think having a specific audience that you're speaking to with your content is really going to help your content get seen. It's going to help you build community. It's going to help people feel like they relate to you, like they want to kind of come back to your page and visit it and feel just connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, in regards to feeling connected, do you spend time, commenting back to individuals who, leave a comment on your posts or um, share more in-depth tips, say they DM you or something along those lines? Are you more involved in that or are you more like just throw the post up there? All right, is whatever it
Yeah.
does, it does.
So I would say I'm more involved. I don't really do like any personalized advice over DMs.
Hmm.
And that I have a pretty firm boundary on, but I try
Sure.
and do maybe like once or twice a month and ask me anything in Instagram stories. So I'll put up like a little question box there and I'll put, ask me anything. And people can
Mhm.
submit like specific situations or things they want advice on, or, sometimes it's stuff about my life and that's totally fine too. But
Yeah.
so if I get requests for specific advice, I'll usually tell people like, hey, I don't have capacity to provide individual advice over Instagram. If you want to work together, like here's how you can do that.
Sure.
Or, stay tuned for my stories. You can always ask a question and ask me anything there. So that way you and the
Yeah.
rest of the community can kind of benefit from that. But I do think to your question about like commenting and stuff, that's really important, especially in the beginning when you don't have like a loyal audience yet and people don't feel like they know you, right? So
Yeah.
engaging with people when they actually do comment is so helpful, just making them want to engage again, to comment again. It's so hard to get people to do that at all in the beginning. And so when they do, you really want to like encourage that good behavior.
Yeah.
If they're another like helping professional, right? Do the same, follow them back, like kind of start
Yeah.
building that community. I think
Mhm.
it's super helpful.
Yeah, no, and that's a great touch point as far as building that community because our last month's session was about the community and building that community, building your brand in a sense in that direction. And you do a great job as far as showing up online, showing up and being
Thank you.
social, being approachable. I was looking through your two Instagram pages, like, oh my God, she is on it. So no, kudos to you. But when you think about your content and what you're posting, and especially those beginning stages, what was the one that you saw the most impressions or most bang for your time, or um kind of posts are seeing the most engagement?
Yeah, I was really surprised that it was not helpful content, but instead was like really validating and affirming content. So
Hmm.
anything that made people say like, me too, or I thought I was the only one who felt that way.
Hmm.
I think that that really does quite well. And so instead of saying like, here's, 4 tips for anxiety, or here's your physical therapist, like 4 tips to recover from an ACL injury or whatever. Instead, if you talk about like what goes through your head when you have the ACL
Hmm.
injury, or 4 ways that people struggle with anxiety that you may not see, that sort of content really builds community. It makes people
Yeah.
follow you, it makes people engage because it's so much
Hmm.
more interesting than
Yeah.
just like helpful content. So that was
Yeah.
really surprising to me in the beginning, of just sort of like what I was noticing was taking off again and again.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. That relatability piece, and I don't even think about that when I post out on social media, right? It's like, how can I relate to individuals? Like, I've been through injuries as a physical therapist. I've had
Yeah,
broken legs. I've missed the biggest game of somebody's life. Like, but I don't share that relatability piece in that sense. But
yeah,
with my own foundation, like that's what I share. I share like I'm relatable to these kids. I was in that same position, and there's
yeah.
power in that sense. But you can utilize that in the social media space, which is something that I would not have thought about.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to like the storytelling piece, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I think too, like we don't have to disclose like tons and tons of information about our personal life to be able
Hmm.
to share like a little tiny detail that allows people to connect and to see you as another human being. And so I think even like if you are doing a helpful tip, framing it as, you know, I remember when I had to sit out on the biggest game of my life due to an injury, here's 4 things that got me through it. That's so much more interesting than
Hmm.
4 things if you have an injury on game day.
Yep. 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 Absolutely.
It's just sort of like
Abs-
that framing.
yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's just so like the idea of branding and social media and Instagram, like it brings on a lot of anxiety when
Yeah.
you're sitting there on your phone or on the computer or you're looking at Canva, or like how can I tie all these pieces in together to make something stand out, make something pop, address my algorithm, whatever the case may be. Um, I guess I want to know what kind of content gets your community or the community in general just talking the most online. I know you
Yeah.
mentioned sharing a little bit about yourself here and there, and like the not necessarily the educational tips, but
Yeah.
what gets the most content?
I think it depends. So, like for my business of therapy page, I've definitely noticed talking about money gets the best engagement. And so that's something
Oh,
I
for
do
sure.
every single month. I
Mhm.
blast my income on the internet. I'm like, here's exactly what I earned, where it came from, all the expenses I had in my business. So I try and share really transparently there. And
Hmm.
that's been interesting for me. Of I didn't originally intend to share about money. I actually was featured in a Business Insider article that I thought was going to be about like sort of how telehealth companies are taking over the mental health space. And it ended up being titled How This Virtual Therapist Earned $250,000 her first year in private practice. And that was super uncomfortable for me at the time because I had
Oh,
not
for sure.
shared my salary on the internet. I hadn't told friends
Hmm.
or family what I was making, you know?
Hmm.
But it took off and I got tons of followers, tons of engagement, tons of people asked me to coach them. And so I was like, huh, I wonder if there's something here. And so I started sharing a little bit more and a little bit more and just noticed
Hmm.
like the content was doing really, really well.
Yep.
Um, on the Sit with Kelly Instagram page, lately I've been noticing a lot of stuff around like eldest daughter has been doing really well for me. So I've kind of tried to like lean into that. Sort of like the really specific examples of how anxiety shows up in my life. So I did one the other
Hmm.
day that was like, unfortunately, my brain can't tell the difference between being chased by a bear and like having my neighbors over for dinner.
Yep. I've
In the
seen that
caption, I was
one.
kind of
Yeah.
saying like, I hate small talk. Like my husband invited these
Mhm.
people over. What am I supposed to do? Um, just very little things, right?
Mhm.
But I think that that like sort of connection piece makes people say like, "Oh, dang, like that's me too."
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super cool. Is there any time that you see these appointments? Well, I guess we talked about it a little bit where their engagement with your individual posts has led to appointments and led
Yeah.
to growth of that business. I guess what ideally is like your conversion rate in that sense? Do you have an idea of what that conversion is to Instagram to your website or
Yeah.
Instagram to your appointments?
Yeah, I don't have like specific numbers there, but
Mhm.
like for instance, I haven't taken new therapy clients in my practice for about 2 years now, but
Oof.
when I was taking new clients, I was really like getting maybe 10 inquiries a month of people who were like legitimately, I want to work with you. I know that you're private pay. I know you're out of network. I know what your fee is, etc.
Mhm.
And so I think that's really helpful. And at the time when I was actively seeking therapy clients, I was saying that everywhere. So like
Yeah.
at the bottom of every single caption, I was saying, if you're looking for a therapist in New York or New Jersey, I'm accepting new clients. Schedule a free 15-minute intro call with me at the link in my bio. I would
Mhm.
share my Instagram stories 3 or 4 times a week. My link to my intro call scheduler, which you can set up in Jane, and say, like, hey, I have empty spots on my caseload. I'm able to take on 2 new clients this month. Schedule a free intro call to get started, right? And so I think
Mhm.
you sort of need to like talk about the things that you want people to do as a next step. Some
Yeah.
people who are really loyal are going to go to your link in bio and sort of figure out options and decide what to do there. But most people need to sort of be reminded of how you can help them. Um,
Yeah.
like with my Business of Therapy Instagram page, you'll notice a lot of my calls to action are for a free webinar that I do, talking about how to get therapy clients from Instagram. And so I'm kind of always saying that, I'm always referencing it. If I'm
Mhm. Mhm.
on one of my programs, I'm always referencing it. And
Yeah.
so I see a ton of leads and traffic coming from Instagram. It's like the primary source of traffic for my website by far.
Okay. Right. So when you host these webinars, do you have like a specific tagline? Because I know you just mentioned, you
Yep.
know, do you have a tagline or specific hashtags that you follow that's in every single post that kind of builds
Yep.
that algorithm?
So I use a company called ManyChat, which basically sets up like DM automations. So I'll
Okay.
have something where it says like comment training, and I'll send you the link to join my free webinar, how to get therapy clients from Instagram. And
Hmm.
then ManyChat is basically like an Instagram approved bot. So it will message anybody who comments training and say, like, hey, here's the link for you to sign up for my training. And it will
Okay.
directly DM that to them, which I think is really cool. I started using that probably a year or two ago, and it's nice
Hmm.
because you're getting people links so they're able to like easily return to it later if they're not
Yep. Yep.
signing up right then. But it also really increases engagement on your posts because you're giving people a very concrete reason to comment, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead of being like, oh, comment whatever, yes, if you relate, you're telling them
Yeah.
like comment training and I'm going to give you
Yeah.
something free,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's equal to it sort of like boosts the post in the algorithm and it does better and better.
Yeah. No, yeah, I never think about it in that therapy sense. You see it all the time on Instagram, like comment this to get
Yeah.
potentially win a free sauna or something like this. Like free
Yeah.
snowboard, cool. We go ahead and do that real quick. Right. Like so yeah, never think about that. And Money Chat was what that app was called, correct?
Many
Okay.
chat. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. Now I've noticed a lot of people in the community asking how often they should post. Um, let's just be real. Algorithms suck, and but they play a huge role in as far as what actually gets seen online. What are your best tips, or your top three tips if we're getting more eyes on your stuff?
Yeah. So my first one, you're probably not gonna like, but I would say is posting every day, at least in the beginning when you're in growth mode. Right? So like,
Yeah.
now I have 90 something followers on one account, 40 something on the other. So I'm not
Mm,
posting every day anymore because I don't
yeah.
need to grow that audience. What I'm working
Yeah.
on is nurturing that audience and converting that
Mm,
audience, right? You don't need even 10,000 followers to have a successful business with clients coming from
yeah.
Instagram. And so
Mhm,
I think in the beginning, posting every day is really helpful for two reasons. One, usually when you start posting, you're not very good at it, right? You
mhm,
feel a
mhm,
little bit awkward on camera. Maybe it comes across a little cringy. You're having a hard time being specific or in your niche. Your brain isn't used to like sort of thinking in this way of
mhm.
Instagram. But the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it, just like anything
Yeah.
else, right?
Yeah.
And so when I started my Instagram, I promised myself I would post every day for a year, and that's what I did. So I did 365 posts, and then let myself take my foot off the gas, right? But imagine if you were posting, three times a week, it would take you
Mhm,
2.5 years to get to 365 posts, right?
yeah.
And so it's just really slows down your momentum. So
Yeah.
I would definitely encourage you in the beginning to try and post daily if you
Mhm,
have capacity to. The second thing I would say is to show up on video. So Instagram Reels are being prioritized in the algorithm for sure. If you
mhm.
scroll through your own Instagram page, you will see most of the content that's in your feed is Reels, right?
Yep.
That's because that's what Instagram is showing you. That's what
Mhm,
they want you to watch on the app. It's like the most engaged with content. And so I think that can feel uncomfortable for people at first, right? Like making a Canva graphic is hard enough, but
yeah.
actually showing up on video means you have to be seen by people, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, and so that can be hard, but they don't have to be complicated. They can be little like 5 or 7 second videos. But definitely, I think showing up in video is super important. And then lastly would be stories probably. So like stories are not going to build your audience. It's not going to help you reach new people, but I think it is so 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 helpful for building a loyal community and
Yeah.
converting the people who are already there into actual clients. Right? So
Mhm,
like share your intro call scheduler link or whatever the first step is for people to work with you. Share a little bit of behind the scenes, chat when you're having lunch for 60 seconds, right? And just let people hear your voice is
yeah.
so, so powerful.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Think about being on the camera. It's like, oh God, do I have something in my teeth? How's my dread? Like all
Yep,
these other things. Like, and you say the more you practice, the more you get good at it. The better you
yep.
get at it. It's like no, no, it's no. I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. It's like golf for me. It's like, oh God, I can practice this driver all I want, and I'm not getting better with this dang club.
Yep.
But no, these are great tips. Now, when you talked about your 365 yearly post, was it actual posts or was it stories? Was it a mixture of both?
So that was in feed. So it's either like a reel or a graphic,
Okay, okay,
like in
okay,
feed, not just
okay.
stories.
Yep. Okay, okay. And then
And
I
it
guess
was
how did
wild too. I went from 0 to 10,000 followers that first year.
Yeesh.
Had a full caseload of private pay clients, quit my full-time
Mm,
job, started getting brand
mhm.
deals. Like I think that people hear the work that goes in, and that can be really, like, off-putting and scary at the beginning.
Yeah,
But if
yeah,
something about you is drawn to Instagram and you're on this webinar today, right, I think that that shows that there's something about it that's really appealing to you,
yeah,
right? And so
yeah, for
why
sure.
wouldn't you put in a year of hard work to kinda get something that's gonna pay off for years and
In the
years to
long
come?
run, for sure. Now, I guess as far as like you finding this brand, this niche, and growing in such a powerful space in a sense. Instagram is very powerful. Social media in general is just very powerful. Did you ever see yourself utilizing like paying for ads or growth tactics to increase your visibility, or was this all, just no charge? I'm gonna just let it run raw.
Yeah, so I've dabbled with ads a little bit. I did not do
Hmm.
ads at all to fill my private practice,
Yeah.
but now I actually teach therapists to use ads because I've worked with a
Hmm.
ton of folks who've had a lot of success. The way I teach ads in my program is $5 a day, so very low cost. But I think it can be really helpful for people, especially in the beginning, to sort of build that community that can take some time and to
Hmm.
specifically build a community in the state or province where you're licensed. So that way it's actual people who can truly work with you, right?
Hmm.
So I do think the ads can be really helpful. I didn't use them because I didn't know how to use
Okay.
them at the time. I
Hmm.
tried ads for my business of therapy page working with like a ads management company, and it
Yeah.
didn't work out so well for me. It was a lot of money and not a lot of
Yeah.
results. But I'm
Hmm.
open to trying again in the future, and
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes. But my growth has
Yeah.
been like 99% organic at this point.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good deal. Love to hear. Now, again, I just want to circle back to algorithms. Like, did you look at also any books, like Instagram rules book, or how did you figure out what's the best time to post? When should I post? Like, because
Yeah.
the timing deal matters too, right?
A little bit, yeah. So I think the most important thing is like the quality of the content, I would say
Okay.
first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like little hacks and tips that you can try. I was doing a lot of like YouTube in the beginning. I was following a lot of Instagram coaches and business coaches, and then really just like trying things and experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of times to post, your Instagram app will actually tell you. So if you have like a creator or business account, you can go to your professional dashboard. And if you press like total followers and scroll down, it'll show you what time your audience is most active. Usually for people, it's like in business hours. So I think that that works out well. But
Yeah.
really, just posting, I think anywhere in that time frame is really helpful. For me, I try and
Okay.
focus on posting when I have a few minutes before and after to engage with any comments that come in, to answer any DMs, and just sort of like have that community building time. I think
Mhm.
is helpful for it to kind of push the post up in people's feed.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been a lot of self study, experimentation, and trial
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
error to sort
Yeah.
of find what
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple times crashing and burning, right? Like just as there, like yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think I'm not making that wrong either, right?
Hmm.
Like, not
Hmm.
every post is going to go super viral or
Exactly.
get tons of new clients, right? But with Instagram, if you're playing the long game, you're showing up every day. Um, you know that they're all kind of working together, right? Some posts are nurturing your existing audience, some are bringing in new people, some are having people say, like, dang, I really want to work with her. Maybe one day, right? And so all of that
Yeah.
kind of plays together.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So with all that thing of everything playing together,
Yeah.
this algorithm, timing, storytelling, all this, how do you decide which platform to focus on? I know we have a big IG following, but you talked about YouTube a little bit there. How do you know which one to post?
Yeah. So I think doing what like you're most excited about, all the platforms have like pros and cons to them. But at the end of the day, wherever you decide is going to be your primary platform, you're going to be spending quite a bit of time there. For
Yeah.
me, actually, when I started, TikTok was my primary platform because as a consumer, that's where I enjoy like scrolling
Mhm.
the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after about 3 months of that, my TikTok was doing well. I think I got to 10,000 followers on TikTok before Instagram actually, but it was making TikTok not fun for me anymore. Like
Yeah.
my entire For You page was just like therapist, like mental health content. And I wasn't seeing as many like clients coming from TikTok. And so
Mhm.
I just sort of went more into
Yeah.
Instagram. It was more fun for me. I liked that not everything had to be a video. You could do some posts
Mhm.
there from Canva, and that kind of like
Yeah.
took off some pressure.
Yeah.
But I do recommend like really picking one platform in the beginning and getting good at
Mhm.
it before adding something else.
Mhm.
Oftentimes I'll see therapists and helping professionals feel like they really want to grow their business. And so they want to do everything. So they're like, I'm going
Yeah.
to do Instagram and TikTok and Pinterest and YouTube and I'm going to start podcasts. And,
Yeah.
you're just spreading yourself so thin that it's hard for you to
Yeah.
be consistent or good at any one
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
I think you're much better off going all in on one platform, whichever platform feels most
Yeah.
exciting to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And I like the fact that Instagram is tied to Facebook. So I'm at least getting
Yeah,
two birds with one stone in that
so
regard.
true.
Um, so 365 posts. Now you're at 730. Boom. We're
Yeah.
doing big things right there, right? But so what are some big misconceptions for healthcare providers in regards to using social media?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say maybe that, like, you have to have a zillion followers to get clients.
Hmm.
Like, I think that I've worked with many therapists who have, like, literally 50,000 followers and have never gotten a client from Instagram, and I've worked
Hmm.
with many therapists who have less than 1,000 followers and have gotten a dozen clients from Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I think that what's more important than the number of followers is, like, the quality of your post and whether or not you're actively, like, selling and promoting your services and telling people
Yeah.
how to work with you.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of helping professionals sort of get in their way with that, and they don't want to extend that offer to people and to tell them,
Hmm.
what the next step is because they don't want to be salesy or they don't want to be pushy.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
but if you don't do that, people are just going to follow you and be like, hey, you're a
Hmm.
cool guy. Right. But if
Yeah.
you tell them, like,
Yeah.
here's how I can help you, I would love to work with you, they're going to take a
Yeah.
next action. So I think that sort of like getting out of your way piece there is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's great advice, Kelly. I just this has just been super enlightening in regards to that brand building and kind of leading the consumer one way or the other with whether it's your post, whether it's the consistency of your post. Um, and as a healthcare provider, we don't want to come off as salespeople. Like
Yeah.
it's weird. It sometimes feels icky, cringy, suspect, all these different things. But at the end of the day, you're selling a product, you're selling a skill, you're selling your knowledge, you're putting value within yourself. And I think a lot of healthcare providers need to realize that and understand that. And especially in the current climate of the states right now with insurance just continuously tanking right there. Now there's just increased need for us to sell ourselves as cash providers, and then worrying about possible, recession and all this stuff that came along with the election, right? So um, I can get a sense of why that would feel so eerie and like wrong, and look at your code of ethics, and see is like,
Yeah.
is that something that's in there, right? So yeah, no, that's great. What metrics do you track to measure that success? I know you mentioned that professional dashboard, um,
Yeah.
but how do you utilize that data that you see in that dashboard, um, and kind of mesh, mold, adapt your strategy moving forward?
Yeah. To go back to your last point first for a second, I think that what's
Hmm.
really helpful is like getting clear on your why. I think so many of us, we start social media from a place of like, I probably should do that, right? Like, it seems like that's the next thing to do.
Yep. Yep.
But at the end of the day, the real motivator is to grow your business. And so if you are putting this time in to advertise your business, part of advertising effectively is like making an offer to work with you. And so I think that sort of like reminding yourself of that, of like the entire point of you growing this audience is to advertise your practice. Don't make it wrong when you advertise your practice, right? Like the other
Yeah.
stuff of almost like nurturing or sharing what you had for lunch or being relatable is like the extra to make that marketing piece like
Yeah.
actually effective.
Hmm.
And so I think that that can just be really helpful of like reminding yourself it's the whole reason you're here to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're allowed to advertise and market yourself and your practice. Um,
Hmm.
and then to your second question about like sort of dashboards and what I'm looking at, one other thing I really try and look at a lot is website taps. So seeing every month, tracking like how many people are going to your website from Instagram, I think is super helpful because that just shows you like how strong your calls to action are, how much this is actually growing your business. And then the second thing I'll do is when I'm planning content for the month, I'll take a look and see like what performed really well and what didn't, and sort of try
Mhm.
and look for trends or patterns there. So is it stuff that is shorter, right? Like quicker reels that are doing well? Is it stuff where I was actually talking face to the camera? Is it content where I started with a story? Was it something a little self deprecating? Was it, just
Mhm.
sort of looking
Yeah.
at stuff there and seeing what patterns come up and then trying to like do more of that because your audience will tell you what works.
Mhm.
And so just kind of like being willing to roll with those punches and lean in when you're seeing something working, I think is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to you said something about scheduling out for the month. Do you set time throughout your day to get, to kind of schedule out your Instagram reels or your posts, things of
Yeah.
that nature? It's like 2 hours a day. Cool. I'm gonna knock out 3 or 4 in that one. Kind of what's your routine in that regard?
Yeah. So my routine has changed a lot over the years. When I
Hmm.
first started my Instagram, I had a full time job and then I was seeing private practice clients in the evenings. And
Hmm.
so I didn't have a lot of time on a daily basis to dedicate to Instagram. And so I
Hmm.
would take like one Saturday a month and I would film literally like 20 reels to use for the entire month. Um, I was
Okay. Can I
very
edit it? Are you changing your outfit? Like, so you have
Oh, I
different.
was changing my outfit.
Oh,
You mentioned, like, I want, like, the dress look good and stuff. I was, like,
yeah.
full glam because I was, like, terrified to be on camera any other way,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was, like, breaking them out. I had, like, 5 shirts, and I would, like, kinda rotate through them and
Okay.
mix through.
Okay.
I don't do that anymore because now
Yeah.
I don't have a full-time job outside of my practice, and so I have
Yeah.
a lot more time and capacity for Instagram.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
usually
Hmm.
what I do now is I spend, like, an hour on Mondays planning, what am I gonna post this week on both accounts, and that's enough time to do both, and then the
Yeah.
day of, I usually go in and, like, film the actual content because I already have the plan in place, so that takes me maybe 5 minutes to film the content, add the text on top that I've already planned and hit post.
Hmm.
So my batching now is a lot more chilled now that I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
have plenty of time during the day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so you have a big calendar. It's like, okay, I'm gonna post here, post there. Yeah. No, you got it down to a science. It sounds like just, which it is a science. It is
It
organic
is a little
chemistry
bit.
3. Well, that's what it seems like for sure.
Yeah.
No, this is amazing. Anything else you'd like to share before we jump into some questions from the attendees?
No, we can jump into questions here.
Okay. All right. Well, I know Pam mentioned what is Kelly's Instagram page name. Go ahead, share with everybody again.
So for anxiety content or like motivation for how you might post as a therapist, you can follow me at Sit with Kelly. And for more marketing and Instagram tips, you can follow me at Business of Therapy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Kelly brings up a great question, and this is a question that I have as well. Have you worked with small practices? And if so, how do you drive appointments to other therapists, not the owner or face of the brand?
Yep. So I would say maybe like 80% of the people I work with are solo practitioners. So it's definitely more my bread and butter. But I have worked with group practices. I actually had an associate myself for a point in time. And I think the most helpful thing is to still really niche down. I know that that can be hard if you have like quite a large practice, but especially if you're a smaller practice, having a niche is super helpful. The other thing I suggest is like empowering your associates to do some marketing as well, right? So, like, teach them what you're learning about Instagram, especially if
Mhm.
you have like a private pay practice where you're charging 200, 250 a session for your associates. They're going to need to also do some marketing, like get out in the
Mhm.
community, build some trust for people to want to
Mhm.
pay that. And so I think empowering them to do that, you can collab between your practice page and them, sort of help them boost that, I think is
Mhm.
really helpful too. And then when I had an associate, she had like a very similar niche to me. And so I would just have sort of like in the bottom of my caption, like if you're looking for a therapist who specializes in anxiety, head to the link in my bio to schedule an intro call. And when people, and I would put like with our team, And then when people would do the intro call, I would just say, like, I'm not taking new clients at this time, but I have an amazing therapist on my team, Anna. She has a very similar, background and approach to me. Would you like to set up an appointment with her? Right. And that
Mhm.
was super helpful too, of like, I think when there is not the option available, but you're sort of giving your trust and recommendation and people trust and like you, they're kind of
Mhm.
happy to take that option.
Yeah. How do you manage when it's like, no, I'd rather work with you because I'm sure you ran
Yeah.
into that. I know other owners have done that too. Like, I'd rather work with you. I'd rather work with you. How do you navigate that space?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on like where you're at with your practice. So I've worked with some therapists who really increase their fee substantially. I worked with a therapist in California. She specializes in working with kids with ADHD. And at the time, her and her associate were both charging 200 per session. And she had a full wait list. And nobody wanted to work with the associate. They were just like, I'll get on your wait list. I'll wait. We increased her rate to 375 per session, which is like very high, I would say, for therapy. And she's
Mhm.
able to see weight loss clients. And now people are willing to say, like, oh, I'll try things with the associate, right?
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
that can be an option there. The second option can be if you're like, no matter what, I'm full, just saying, like, I don't even take a wait list. Like, I'm not accepting new clients. If you want to
Yeah.
work with somebody in our practice, like, unfortunately, this is the only option. So
Mhm.
I would kind of recommend one of those two strategies.
Okay. No, that's great. Make sure y'all are taking notes of some of these gems right here. I tell you what, I got notes going on galore right now. I'm in a free class, free online webinar right here. Uh, question from Krista: how do you reach new audiences, especially when your Instagram has plateaued but your business is booming?
Yep. So one thing that you could try is ads. I think can be really helpful to sort of like boost things um, from like a manual process, right? If you're paying Instagram to show your content to new people, they're gonna show your content to new people.
Mhm.
So that can be one really helpful way. I think something else that can be helpful is looking and seeing, is there room for you to niche down more and be more specific?
Mhm.
Usually that helps people to reach higher audiences. And then third is like, can you be creative? So either can you try a new style of content that you haven't tried before? Can you reach out to somebody in your niche or an adjacent niche and collaborate on a post or a reel or an Instagram live together? Can
Mhm.
you sort of like do something to put yourself in front of a new audience? I
Yeah.
think can be really helpful too. Or also looking at your analytics and seeing like what worked really well in the past. Was there something that brought in a lot of followers or a lot of engagement? Can you sort of redo that post, right? Like put a
Yeah.
new video, put a new trending sound, but use the same text on screen. Maybe do the same making your coffee in your B-roll or whatever. Kind of
Mhm.
trying to like recreate that momentum instead of
Yeah.
reinventing the wheel.
Okay. Yeah. No, and then just kind of some couple more questions here. Like, can you share more about brand deals and how did you start doing them, and what would you advise those of us growing who don't have brand deals yet to get them?
Yeah. So I'm going to give a plug for my podcast because I have an episode coming out on this shortly. The Business of Therapy podcast. I myself and now I have like a brand partnership management team. We did a whole like hour-long interview on this that I think is going to be released later this month. So that might be somewhere to like stay tuned if this is something you're really interested in. But in general, I think for me, I really started to first focus on growing my practice and filling my caseload because
Mhm.
you're going to get way more bang for your buck doing that than you are doing brand deals in the beginning. And then
Gotcha.
once I had a full caseload, I had a few thousand followers. I had a good community. I had a good community of people who wanted to work with me, who trusted me. Like, if they're willing to spend $250 for therapy, they're going to be willing to buy a $20 journal if I say that it's good, right? So
Mm.
there was kind of
Yeah.
like that trust there.
Mhm.
And then I
Mhm.
just started like pitching brands. So brands that I enjoyed using, I would reach out to them. I would maybe tag them in stories. I would ask them if they were partnering with people, and just kind of took it from there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. You got Nike or anything like that in that regards? Like, hey, you got to put on this Nike quarter zip real quick. You look good when you go into therapy, right? Look
Yeah.
good, feel good, play. Yeah, all the good things. No. But so I guess, yeah, like and Anne Marie, she answered your question in regards to like, you reach out once you got a good following, you reach out, see if they're looking to collab, looking at ambassadorships, things of that
Yeah,
nature, right? So a lot of brands, especially in the healthcare space, there's a lot of opportunity to market. Like you're in a sports physical therapist, there's Lululemon, there's New Recovery, there's all these different brands that you can potentially tap into when it comes to healthcare. Um, let's see. Heather asked, "Do you have specific software to make reels and graphics?" For me, it's Canva.
yeah.
Easy. I'm learning it, but Kelly, what do you use?
Yeah, I primarily use Canva too.
Cool. Yep.
Adobe Express is another option that's very, very similar to Canva. I would say for Reels, like 99% of them, I film and edit within the Instagram app itself.
Mhm,
That's actually a nice sort of cheat sheet to Instagram. If you add the text in Instagram, Instagram can then read your text and understand it, sort of like Google with search engine optimization and stuff. So I always recommend like editing in Instagram just because it helps it better understand your content and put it in front of the right people.
mhm.
For more complicated stuff, if I'm doing like a vlog or something with lots of edits, I'll use a free app called CapCut, where it's just a little bit easier to edit really longer footage.
Mhm, mhm. I've used CapCut before. Another one I would suggest is Opus Clip as well. I utilize Opus Clip sometimes.
I haven't heard of
And
that. I can look into it.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So same thing, kind of you can clip videos and it'll give you a grade as far as okay, this is how great the quality here is, and then it kind of give you a title and put all the captions and all the stuff in there. So it does pretty much everything right then and there. Do I
Very
use
cool.
it 365 days a year? Nope, sure don't. Sure don't, but I will try. I will try moving forward. Matthew, any suggestions on choosing your IG username?
Yep.
Huge, right?
Yeah, so I think that you have like a few options. One, you can use something that has a keyword, right? So, like maybe you use physical therapy or anxiety, counseling, like something that your people are searching for. So, you could sort of do like your business name, something descriptive like that. Or you can do something related to your personal name. A lot of folks just use their first and last name. That was personally taken for me. So I used Sit with Kelly. I thought it was kind of cute as a therapist.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but my business of therapy account, very descriptive, right? Business of therapy. I'm just like, this is what we're doing here. Right. And so if people want to do that, they might search business tips for therapists and kind of find me just from the username. So I would say either your business name, some keywords, or some combination of your personal name.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, on top of the name, the little descriptions, does that play a role as well as like, I am a sports physical therapist? Does that play a role? Like, say it's just between the lines and then underneath you have your little info bio deal. Does
Yep,
that play a role in that as well, or is it
kind of.
specifically
So
to the
the
name?
when you look at your profile, you have your username, and then right above your bio is like a bold section where you can write your
Mhm.
name. That's the only searchable part of your bio. So I do
Gotcha.
recommend having keywords there. So you might
Mhm.
have like anxiety therapist in New York,
Mhm.
if that's your specialty, in addition to your name. Or I have like Kelly McKenna, business coach for therapists, right? So that part is searchable. The rest of your bio is not searchable, but you do want to spend some time on it because that's how people who are discovering you are going to quickly decide whether or not to follow you, right? Your bio
Mhm.
kind of tells them, like, yes, I'm for you. You're going to get more out of following this page. It's not just one random reel that you like, come in, right? So I think it is helpful to be really specific there, even if it's not a searchable area.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, great tips. Now, question from Shay. Are there issues with HIPAA with following people back if they're a client?
Yeah.
And then how do you make sure you're not following your client?
Yeah. So I definitely recommend having like a social media disclaimer in your intake
Mhm,
policies.
mhm,
And it's something I always talk about like in the first session with folks. I let them know, I'm on Instagram. You may have found me there. You're welcome to continue following me. You're welcome to unfollow me if you'd like. I'm not the only one who manages my social media page. I have an assistant who helps with like comments and DMs sometimes. So like she may reply to you and not even know it's you. But please, don't DM me. That's not a HIPAA compliant way for us to communicate. If you need
yep,
anything, communicate with me within Jane. So I think that's really helpful of just sort of like laying that groundwork. And then I don't follow people back unless they're like a professional account. Yes, it's still possible. Like I've worked with therapists in my therapy practice or a physical therapist in my therapy practice, right? So I think there's a little bit of room of like you might accidentally do something and you can unfollow, you can address that if that happens, but I would never follow just like a random person's personal page because they're liking and commenting on my stuff.
Mhm.
Because I think that to me is like a clear line there of they might become a potential client. This is not like a networking situation. I'm not
Yeah.
kind of following or engaging with that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yep. Oh, some boundaries. We've had some
Yep.
boundaries laid out there, solid and strong here. Now, the second question from Shay is: do you use a social media scheduler? We know that you got it down to a science as far as scheduling, but do you ever just utilize like, okay, I'm gonna schedule this, and then have to remember how to collaborate after the fact, right?
I don't personally use a scheduler. I've found that Instagram glitches quite a bit, and so I don't really like trust schedulers. Sometimes I feel like they post stuff out of order, they remove the text or something like that. So typically I post manually and kind of use that as like a reminder to engage before or after posting, but I do plan things in advance. Nothing fancy. I use a Google Sheet that I just kind of have like the date, my plan for what's going in the post or the reel, my caption.
Hmm.
So I plan in advance, but I'm not like hitting schedule on something in advance.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know because I do schedule, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning when I'm not sleeping. It's like, let me
Yeah.
go ahead and
Do you
schedule
get
something because
glitches or does it work okay for you?
I haven't seen a glitch, but again, I'm not checking it like that.
Yeah.
So I need to again.
I've only scheduled twice and both times a glitch, and I was like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm just gonna
Oh,
myself.
oh, you're 0 for 2. Okay, okay, that would make sense then. That would make perfect sense. Shay has another question as far as newsletters. Thoughts on those? Do you utilize newsletters to drive engagement and interest?
Yep. So I use newsletters now, but sort of what I was saying before of like start with one platform
Mhm,
and then go from there. I would
mhm,
not do email in the beginning because
mhm,
basically like Instagram is a lot easier to grow your audience and then you can use your Instagram audience to grow your email list. But doing both at the same time is going to be a little distracting. I'd rather you in the beginning use Instagram to grow your caseload than to grow
mhm.
the email list.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lot of steps to get people from Instagram to the email list. Then they're going
Mhm,
to
yeah,
open your emails, click your emails, decide to work with you,
mhm,
etc. But I do think long term it can be helpful, especially if you're somebody who's interested in like doing courses or doing a membership or brand deals or something where you really need to reach people at scale.
yeah,
That can be helpful, but if you're just trying to fill your caseload, I think it's kind of unnecessary.
yeah, 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 for sure. That's newsletters a lot of work. A
Yeah,
lot of work. Even if you use Chat GPT or something like that, it's still a lot of work.
it is.
Um, yeah, Lacey, to your point, could someone let me know one more time how we check what times of they the most of engagement? I believe Kelly mentioned you go into the dashboard on your Instagram, right, and you can scroll up
Yep,
and see when people are most active. And she made a great point that most people are active pretty much during working hours, right?
yep,
So, and you spend time after the fact, after work, commenting back or having your assistant comment back, correct? Make sure I will remember that correctly.
yep, correct.
Okay. Okay. Um, Don, great. Yep. I thought it was egotistical as well. Like, I'm gonna raise my prices too for myself, but you know what? But no, it makes perfect sense. Whether you can't fit anybody else or you're just trying to drive business to your other therapist, right? Like that makes perfect sense. Something that I'll myself will have to navigate too. Um,
Basic supply and demand.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Pretty sure yes, I believe there is a recorded session. Yep, Jack already mentioned that. All right. Kelly, can you say a little bit more about relatability posts and stories, like more examples?
Yep. So I would say one example would be to like follow either of my Instagram pages. I think you'll see a lot of good examples there.
Mhm,
The second thing I'll say, and I know we'll talk about this a bit more in the end, but I have like a Reels membership where I send out weekly Reels ideas for people, and I send out tons of relatable ideas there. I send out 4 or 5 ideas a week, and probably 1 or 2 of them are very relatable, as sort of like the primary purpose of that prompt. So if you're somebody who's struggling with that, that can be really helpful. But in general, if you see like funny lip syncing audios, right, that's a really good, easy way to be relatable there.
Mhm.
You can even film like a little 7-second video of you sitting down in your office chair or drinking a cup of coffee or going on a walk or whatever and put some text on top. But you kind of want to like follow either prompts in the Reels membership or even look and see like what are other creators doing on Instagram? How are they sort of like structuring posts? And I think following a framework in the beginning can be really helpful when it's hard for you
Mhm.
to kind of like come up with ideas and know where do I
Yeah.
even start with this?
Yeah. Now, have you ever utilized like, okay, sometimes a reel, there's certain songs, right? See a song,
Yep.
you can see, okay, there's 57,000 people using
Yep.
this song as do you sometimes utilize that and go through that to see if there's any ideas of what's like the common trend there?
Yep, for sure. And I think what's helpful too is like to pull inspiration from other niches, right? So like I would not see what is a therapist that's talking about anxiety doing and what did they say? And then I do like the same thing, right?
Mhm.
Because I think that that's sort of just like copying versus having your own voice. But I
Yeah.
might look at something that you post, David, and be like, oh, I love how he shared, um, about like when he had to sit out of the biggest game of his career, here's 4 things that helped. And I might say, I had to speak at the biggest conference in my career and I had a panic attack. Here's 4 things that helped, right? So I
Mhm.
might take
Mhm.
inspiration from how you framed a post and say,
Yeah.
okay, how can I kind of bring this in for myself? But I think that it's really helpful for that to kind of look outside of your niche for
Yeah.
inspiration and just
Mhm.
see, like, okay, what's working here? What did I like about this? How can I kind of adapt this for me?
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. Um, yeah. Jack, yes, that is it is Opus Clip, yes, sir. So, as far as the tool that I use for videos and media, there's a paid membership to it. It's not expensive. I can't remember what it is, but there's also free as well. And if you pay, you obviously get more. They always do it. Lacey asks hashtags. Is it still good to keep certain hashtags in case the keywords are searched? Especially if a hashtag's not trending, right? You create your own hashtag and you're trying to get it to have over 100 uses and yada yada yada. Is it still good to use, or should you look to make a shift?
I think it's still good to use. You can
Hmm.
use up to 30 hashtags, so there's no harm in using, 2 or 3 local hashtags. I'd probably do therapy in Houston, therapy in Texas, Texas therapist, Houston therapist. If
Hmm.
you see clients virtually, I might even add in therapy in Austin, therapy in Dallas, right? And kind of having a few options there because I think
Hmm.
that those you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck than something like anxiety that might have I don't know, 25 million uses or
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
no one's gonna see
Hmm.
your post from that anyways, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody's searching the hashtag therapy in Houston, they're looking for a therapist in Houston, like you're actually getting
Yeah.
a bit of reach there, even if it's not
Hmm.
to a zillion people.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. No, that's great. So yeah, sometimes those big hashtags could be a nightmare and not necessarily benefit you as a practitioner or as a business owner or uh, person who's just trying to grow their Instagram following. That's great tips there for
Yep.
sure. Golly, more notes. Hold on, write this down too. You know what I'm saying? What platform do you use as far as your email newsletter? With your
Yep.
emails and newsletter?
It used to be called ConvertKit, but now they call it Kit.
Mhm,
And I like it. I'm not very tech savvy, to be honest, and it's
mhm.
pretty easy and straightforward, which I like.
You're not tech savvy. I'm pretty sure
I'm
Instagram's tech.
It is, but I can't do all the fancy things on there.
Yeah, no, and for I use newsletters and Mailchimp's integrated in Jane, so that's the one I use
Uh,
um, for between the lines, and then I use MailChimp as well for my foundation. So that's the one that's been great for me. But I'm not tech savvy, so I send it to my website designer, clean it up, send it out for me. Um, uh, Question from Heather: how does one find balance between adding some personal content to create connection and relatability while still maintaining a professional impression?
Yeah.
Great question.
For me, I never share anything that I wouldn't share with a client in session. And I think what's helpful is like, when you're a therapist in session, that client is paying you for their time. And so I very rarely self disclose in session unless it's helpful for them.
Hmm.
So on social media, I'm self disclosing a lot more because it's my time, it's my space, it's not a therapy session. Right. But I would
Hmm.
never share something that I wouldn't say to a client in
Hmm.
session if asked or if it was helpful or useful for them or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think that that can be really helpful of even like small talk stuff. Like I would never go on and on to a client about a restaurant I tried, but if they were like, you know, at the end of session, like, hey, I'm visiting Miami this weekend. Do you have any recommendations? I might tell them, here's two or three restaurants. It's not like a huge deal
Hmm.
or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's one thing. I think another thing is like sort of more generally, not sharing things that are like active in my life, right? So like I might say, in the past I struggled with body image and like this is what that looked like, but I wouldn't say today I'm having a horrible body image day and like these are the thoughts that I'm having because I don't want my clients to then log on to session with me and be like, oh dang, I'm worried about her. Am I allowed to talk about
Yeah,
this? Whatever.
yeah,
Right. And so
yeah.
kind of talking about things in the past tense I think is really helpful.
Mhm,
Versus like my husband and I got into a fight last night. Here's how we dealt with it. Right. Maybe
mhm,
say, when my husband and I get into a fight, here's some communication things that have worked for us, right? So I
mhm,
think
mhm.
just kind of having that can be a really
Yep,
helpful frame and
yep,
ask yourself, like, how would I feel if a client saw this? And if the answer is like, it's a no for me, then don't share it.
yeah, yeah. No, I
Another
feel like
really helpful thing is like, I'll do a lot of reels where I write POV and then I put the text. And so I'm not saying like everything that I post on Instagram is myself. POV can kind of be like a skit. It can be something that like my clients feel or people that like my friends relate to or whatever. So you don't
mhm,
always have to share from like this is my life. And I think
yeah,
POV can be a great way to sort of share relatable content without saying like
sure.
this is me.
Mhm. Point of view, Lillian. Mhm, mhm. Point of view. Um, well, if there's not any more questions, we can go ahead and jump into an outro. So thank you for joining us for this session. We know social media, as much as I have alluded to it, can be a nightmare. But but if you but there are ways that you can stand out. There's ways that you can build your brand. There are ways that you can become more confident. Like Kelly said, the more you practice, the better you get good at it. Um, and before I forget, for anyone here last month, I mentioned that I am a guest on Jane's upcoming front desk podcast episode. That episode is live, and you can find a to it in the comments now. With that being said, that is the end of our session number 9. We are moving and shaking, and every conversation becomes more powerful, more guided towards our specific needs, and they're all great tools to help us grow. So with this, thank you very much, Kelly, for joining us and sharing such a wealth of knowledge as far as how to grow our business and grow our visibility on Instagram and socials.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here with you today. And thanks for having me on.
Yes, ma'am. All right, everybody. I'll see you next month. This is Dr. Bruton, and this is Jane Ambassador's Office Hours, number 9, signing out. Bye now.
Bye.